As artificial intelligence rapidly transforms the global digital economy, it is also redefining both the opportunities and the risk facing women and girls. From innovation and creative leadership to surveillance, deepfakes, impersonation, and algorithmic bias, AI is reshaping how power, safety, and visibility operate in digital spaces. Across Africa and beyond, the rise of technology-facilitated gender-based violence is raising urgent questions about ethics, accountability, and protection in the digital age. Joining us now is Francesca Uriri, Executive Director and founder of Leading Ladies Africa and a leading voice on gender-inclusive leadership on the continent. She joins us to examine the intersection of female leadership, artificial intelligence, and technology-driven gender-based violence, why coordinated action across government, technology platforms, civil society, and communities is now critical to building safer and more equitable digital futures. Welcome to Newsday.
Francesca, can you hear us?
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. All right. So let's talk about the artificial intelligence. It is advancing at an extraordinary pace. So how exactly is AI changing the nature of harm women on face online, from deepfakes to impersonation? And what does this mean for women's safety and leadership in digital spaces? Francesca.
Yeah, thank you once again for having me here. I would say that AI has completely transformed the space in the sense that we are seeing an increase in deepfake attacks, cyber stalking, doxing, trolling, cyberbullying. AI is facilitating the increase from offline. So we're seeing a transference from offline to online. And we're seeing aggravated cases specifically against women in leadership, female journalists, female politicians, just because of the widespread use of AI in the world today.
We know that recently the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, took place, and there's no better time to talk about this than now. It is no longer physical, as you said. It has now gone online. But how is technology reshaping the patterns, the scale, the impact of violence against women across Africa today?
That's a fantastic question. So prior to the internet and even AI, there wasn't a scale and speed to some of these incidents. But now something can happen in some remote village in Kenya, and within seconds, it goes around the whole world. So the question of how technology is sort of like making this rapid is just the scale, right? We have different technology platforms and social platforms that make the dissemination of information quicker than the speed of light. And so there have to be larger frameworks that regulate and stronger laws in place that help protect women and girls from the harms that these, I would say, crimes or incidents, how they are committed online.
Indeed. And as part of your work, you consistently advocate for women's leadership. Now, in concrete terms, how do women leaders, creators, and activists help shape safer and more accountable digital environments, you think?
I love that question because even though women and girls are at the center of all of these incidents, we need a larger framework to help protect and prevent. We need the governments to build stronger, more rigorous rules, laws, and regulations. We also need to hold the technology companies accountable because, they create these products, they create these platforms. As a civil society group ourselves, Leading Ladies Africa continues to work to advocate on communications campaigns, on programmatic efforts to bridge that gap between government, policymakers, and of course the civil society groups. So in sort of like simpler terms, everybody is required to do this work. It won't just be the women leaders themselves, it won't just be the content creators, but it's a more cohesive ecosystem that is needed to advance and push for impact in this space.
I know we do a lot of talking, conferences, summits, workshops about how to, deal with this issue of gender-based violence, but how can we get practical? What practical role do you think communities, women-led networks like yours, play in responding to online abuse and support victims of this technology-facilitated gender-based violence?
Yeah, I think we get a lot of flack. Civil society groups, it's like, oh, yet again another conference, yet again another convening. In fact, Leading Ladies Africa just hosted, together with TechHer, with support from the Illuminate Foundation, we just hosted a policy roundtable this past Friday on this particular issue. In terms of, again, practical things that can be done, we already have civil society groups who, like TechHer NG, who have rigorous first responder systems in place to help support women and girls who have faced gender-based violence incidents online and offline. But like I said, in sort of like more practical steps, CSOs can't do it alone. We absolutely need the government. And so, for example, the Cyber Crimes Act is not codified. It doesn't have like a gender-specific focus. The government can work with, policymakers, policy institutions, and CSOs to make sure that we're codifying laws that have specific gender lens to protect women and girls. And of course, civil society groups can continue to, do the advocacy work, do the programmatic efforts to make sure that we're creating rigorous systems that protect women and girls from the harms of technology-facilitated gender-based violence.
Indeed, and still talking about your group, where do the biggest gaps exist today in government policy, tech platform accountability, or digital literacy? What do you make of it?
I think it's textured. I would say, obviously, the first thing is there doesn't seem to be, so when you hear AI, for example, people still think of, okay, there are LLMs or there are these things in the cloud. But AI is here to stay. It's an everyday thing. Everybody uses some form of AI assistance. So first of all, the knowledge of technology, we have to do more capacity building for even those in government and even those within the policy space to understand that this technology is now everyday. You also mentioned training, and digital literacy. It will astound you that there are some, female leaders or women leaders who, they're not quite sure how to navigate the tech space or AI. They're like, okay, what is a deep fake? What is doxing? Why should I be concerned about it? So we have to do everything in tandem, everything at once, right? There has to be the advocacy, there has to be the training, there has to be the digital literacy efforts. And from the government's perspective, we want to make sure that they understand the importance of codifying into law some of these systems that help protect women and girls.
So this collaboration we've been talking about, how feasible or practicable is it when you talk about collaboration between government, technology companies, civil society, and communities, if we are serious about ethical AI and women's digital safety?
It is feasible, but I will say it's a long game. It's not something that is going to happen in 3 months or in 6 months or even in a year or two, but we must begin now. There's an urgency that must come to it. There's an urgency that we must bring to it. And so if we start now, over the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years, we will begin to see the impact of the regulations, of the laws, of the frameworks, of the understanding. So for example, if a crime is committed online and it's in Swahili or it's in Yoruba, some of these LLM systems don't recognize it because it's in a language that the AI doesn't understand. And that's where like working with the tech companies comes in, because they have to understand that English is just one language in the world, and there has to be like a particular focus on other regions who don't necessarily converse or communicate frequently in English. So I would say it's a long game, but we must start now. The civil society groups, the government, the technology platforms, the technology companies, and even the users themselves, even the women, even the men, right? As allies, men also are part of this, they're part of this ecosystem. And so we're not leaving them out, of the conversation. All hands, I would say, need to be on deck.
Indeed, and still talking about the 16 days of activism, what specific commitments should policymakers, tech platforms and society at large be making to protect women in digital spaces as of this time?
Yes, thank you for that. I would say, first, we have to move beyond campaigns. So the 16 days of activism, fantastic. It's a UN date, commemoration, and it's wonderful. But we must take it beyond the 16 days. So that is the first thing. The advocacy work and the programmatic campaigns must continue beyond the 16 days. For policymakers and government, we must work to codify laws that have a gender lens. And there are many groups, such as WILAN, WIMBYs, who are working with the government on, certain aspects of codifying gender-specific laws, regulations into laws. On the government's part, there's nothing like too much information. There's nothing like too much learning. We must continue to engage, provide the relevant information, and build bridges. On the last part is the technology platforms. The government must build rigorous regulation systems and laws that hold these platforms accountable. So like I said, initially, it's all hands on deck. It is a textured, layered, somewhat complex, peculiar situation, but it's not impossible. And we must, as a matter of urgency, start now.
We would like to end it on that optimistic note that it is not impossible, and we must thank you for your work, the work you're doing to end gender-based violence in Nigeria. Francesca Uriri is Executive Director and Founder, Leading Ladies Africa. Thank you for your time.